Ezra 7 through 10. Well, Ezra now makes an entrance into his own book in chapter 7, and the year is 458. This is 60 years past when Zerubbabel came in chapters 1 through 6. And so we read in 7, 1 and verse 8, "After these things, in the reign of Artaxerxes, king of Persia, Ezra came to Jerusalem in the 5th month, 7th year of the king." And we're going to hear I and we now for the rest of the book quite a bit. Well, Ezra, of course, has been authorized by the king to go back to Jerusalem and prescribe the law that the people would have known coming from Yahweh. Again, this is a very common polytheistic way of thinking, to ensure peace throughout the kingdom, by giving the right for someone like an Ezra to go back to his home area and help those people living in that area live according to the laws of their God. Ezra is noted as a priest. He's also noted as a scribe. Now, the word scribe has been used as a verb many times before this in the biblical story, but now we come to the period where we have the official scribe, which would be someone who is an expert in legal matters of Torah. So again, in a very non-literate society, this would be a very important position, and he would be, the scribe would be considered the local educator of the people of Israel now that they're back in the land. We're also going to hear of the term rabbi starting to be used in the intertestamental period. Rabbi is a transliteration of the Hebrew term for my master, and they are not part of the biblical story until now and going forward. And of course, when we get to the days of Jesus, he himself will be called, or people will call even Jesus, rabbi. Well, Ezra's job description is in 7:25. "And you, Ezra, according to your God-given wisdom, set magistrates and judges who may judge all the people who are in the region beyond the river, all such as know the laws of your God, and teach those who do not know them." So what would Ezra be teaching? Of course, would be Torah. Even verses like Deuteronomy 6, 4 and 5, when you stand, when you sit, when you talk to your children, that kind of verse, the Shema. Jeremiah 31, 34. This is the goal, I think, of an Ezra. "No more shall every man teach his neighbor, but every man shall know the Lord, for they shall all know me." This is the goal then of Ezra, to teach the people the ways of Yahweh, even hoping for that future state. And maybe he had in his mind in the biblical story, I think it fits, that he would have hoped that his work would actually lead the people into the kingdom that God himself would bring. And so, of course, there's more to tell in the story, but he didn't know that. Ezra responds again in chapter 7, "Blessed be the Lord God of our fathers, who has put such a thing as this in the king's heart, to beautify the house of the Lord. He has extended mercy to me before the king and his counselors. So I was encouraged as the hand of the Lord my God was upon me, and I gathered leading men of Israel to go up with me." So Ezra is excited to go back home from Babylon to Israel. And when he gets there, though, here's what he finds. He is, frankly, horrified. This is in 9, 1-3. "The leaders came to me saying, 'The people of Israel have not separated themselves from the peoples of the lands, for they have taken some of their daughters as wives for themselves and their sons, so that the holy seed is mixed with the peoples of those lands.'" So what he came upon was, let's just call it, purity concerns. The idea that the people of Israel had intermarried, of course, going all the way back to Babylon days, but now they've brought their families all the way to Israel. And so this idea of purity is on Ezra's mind. Where he gets this from is in Exodus 34, and specifically Deuteronomy 7, verses 1-4, passages like this. "When the Lord your God brings you into the land," talking about Canaan originally, "which you go to possess, you shall conquer them and utterly destroy them. You shall make no covenant with them, nor show mercy to them, nor shall you make marriages with them. You shall not give your daughter to their son," so forth, "for they will turn your sons away from following me to serve other gods." So the reason for the destruction of the original Canaanites was not just for a pure seed of Jewry. It was because of their worship. The intermarriage of pagans would lead to, in God's opinion, the worship of other gods. Well, this is a bit different now that we have come, this far into the story. So here's what Ezra says. his decision. This is in 10, verses 2 and 3. We have trespassed against our God and have taken pagan wives from the people of the land. Now let us make a covenant with our God to put away all these wives and those who have been born to them. So Ezra, speaking to his contemporaries now, he says basically the same thing. I want you to separate from your wife, and also separate, as the male, apparently speaking to them, also from your children that you have borne with your wife, according to the advice of my master and of those who tremble at the commandment of our God. And it takes about 2 months for this vast program of separating between husbands and wives and children. Even Jeshua the high priest and his family, his sons, had married foreign women. Well, what are we to make of this? I'm personally of the opinion that, of course, in Deuteronomy 7, the idea of wiping out the people of Canaan so that there would be no worship of other gods, that's the story of this period. At this point here, I'm going to recommend that what this would be an example of would be what I'll call a pastoral piece of advice. In other words, does he get told by God for these marriages to be destroyed or undone, divorce, and so forth? We're going to hear in Malachi 3 that God hates divorce. In the same context of this sort of situation, Malachi will actually say that God hates divorce, even though Ezra is mandating divorce. So we're kind of at odds with the story here. And what I'd recommend as a way of summarizing what Ezra decides to do at the end of his book, he gives the pastoral advice for these people to divorce. Here's the challenge. When we get to Jesus, and especially when we get to Paul, and here's why my concern comes back to this idea of pastoral advice on the part of Ezra. When we hear Jesus talk, and especially Paul in 1 Corinthians 7, both of these men do not recommend necessarily divorcing a pagan wife if, and this is a big if, you can both worship the right God, then you can stay married to a pagan wife. So I think this story in Ezra is more descriptive than prescriptive. And the decision that Ezra made, correct as it might have been for his situation, his time and place, I don't think it is prescriptive. In other words, that we are to always separate from a pagan spouse when we're in that situation. I think the words of Jesus and Paul later will clarify how these marriages could have and can stay together.